The saxophone was something that once he saw it, he was hooked on it. Once he put the neck strap on, he never took it off.
Hello, everyone. We're trying something new right now. Instead of the usual podcast, we are trying an interview series by Zoom video chat because that will be the simplest way to bring you this content. So with me today, I am very, very happy to introduce Joy Stubblefield, who is the sister of the legendary tenor saxophonist John Stubblefield, and she is writing a book on his life. So Joyce, welcome very much. Thank you very much and welcome to this interview.
Well, thanks for having me, CJ.
Thank you. So I'd like to start out, first of all, in my research and what I've been able to listen to, John really is, I think, one of the most underrated of saxophone players that I think emerged in the 70s post John Coltrane, Albert Ayler, Pharoah Sanders, vice versa. And like players like Tina Brooks or Hank Mobley, who until recently started getting due recognition, he's not somebody that you hear a lot about. And he was born on November 4th, 1945 in Little Rock. He started on piano but moved to the saxophone. He grew up in a segregated neighborhood which shaped his musical tastes. So would you like to just talk about that briefly?
Well, yes, John was interested in music very early on. My mom decided when we were very young that she wanted us to have piano lessons. And all of us, my brother William and John, had music lessons, and that really sparked his initial interest in music. He did very well in piano.
And by the time that he was 17 years old, he joined York Wilburn and the Thrillers, which was an R&B group. Then he toured with Solomon Burke for a year, which is pretty amazing, before enrolling at the AME College in Pine Bluff.
Yes.
And then by 1967, he was a member of the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians, which of course, Muhal Richard Abrams, Roscoe Mitchell, Jack DeJohnette, so many great players were a part of there. And he was on one of Muhal's pivotal albums from 1968. Then the association that he's most known for is Charles Mingus. So just talk a little bit about that.
Well, John initially was in Chicago, and that's when he became a member of the AACM and was quite active with them. And he always said that the music was in New York. So in 1971, he left Chicago for New York. He played with several bands, but initially Mingus was one of the initial bands that he began to play and tour with.
Mm-hmm. I think he had played before that with Tito Puente and the Thad Jones Mel Lewis Orchestra, right? Or was that a little bit after?
It was before and during, because Tito Puentes, he played with off and on. I would hear him talk about touring with them.
Okay. And also in 1973, he had played with Miles Davis briefly. Was he the replacement for David Liebman?
I don't recall who he was replacing at that particular time for Miles' band. I remember him being a replacement before joining Fort Apache. Carter, I can't think of his first name. He replaced Carter in the Fort Apache, but I don't know who he was the replacement for in the Miles band.
Okay. So pretty much all throughout his life, John had a very unique relationship to music, as we talked about in some of our pre-preparation phone calls. So just talk a little bit about, if you will, at length, if you'd like, about John's approach to music and what you remember about his drive and determination.
Yeah. Okay. Just thinking back, John was inducted into the Jazz Hall of Fame here in Little Rock, back in the early 80s, and he couldn't attend because he was traveling. So I spoke on his behalf, and this is how I got this information. But John fell in love with the saxophone, and he had a very close friend whose aunt was married to Don Bias. And so they listened to a lot of music together early on. I mean, these are teenagers, 7th, 8th, and 9th graders, just really listening to the music. And John, after leaving the piano lessons and entering junior high school, this is when he had his first opportunity to join the junior high school band. And he told a story that he initially picked up a baritone sax, thinking it was an alto. And he had it for about a day, and then he discovered he didn't have what he wanted. And his close friend, Tyron Shaw, had the saxophone. So they negotiated and they switched. And I don't think the band leader was too happy. He wanted John to stay with that or either go clarinet. And I remember him saying, "Oh, no way. It is the saxophone." So the saxophone was something that once he saw it, he was hooked on it. Once he put the neck strap on, he never took it off. He had it on all the time. And I'm sure our neighbors wanted us to move because he was blowing all the time. So this was something that became a passion for him very early on, extremely early on. Mm-hmm.
Would that have been the mid-1950s, early 60s at this point?
And the mid-60s, yes, mid-60s. Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I know you had told me he was really into John Coltrane. Who else was he listening to at the time that really formed his conception?
Oh, goodness. He was listening to all types of music. I might not be able to call all of the names, but all of the greats, Art Blakely, of course, all of the saxophone players. I wish I had made a list of those, but all of the masters. John had an opportunity to study with them and to play with them, and this also enhanced his ability to play. And one thing I didn't mention is one of his friends told me when they were in high school and they were just learning the basics, that John never played just little chords. He was following the chords of the big band players, and that's what he started. And he looked at him and said, we need to learn the basic chords. He said, no, we learn the big chords and then we go back. So John kind of started at the top, went back to the first and then back to the middle. So he was really, really intense in his application of learning, mastering the saxophone.
So that's exactly what you meant then when you said he would start at the most advanced stuff and then go back towards the basics. So he would be, you're talking big bands, he would study Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Fletcher Henderson, all of those great bands.
You're calling the names. Mm-hmm.
That's really great. And I listened a little bit today to that Mingus release that came out last year. Of course, it's so long, I only could listen to a few tunes while I do the research, but on Epithancanthropus erectus, John plays an amazing solo on there, and he's just really locked into the rhythm section. Mingus and Roy Brooks, and I forget who the pianist is on the record.
The pianist, I have it here on that remastered record. It was John on saxophone and Joe Gardner on trumpet.
Mm-hmm.
Don Pullum on
Oh,
piano.
Don Pullen, yes,
Don Pullum, hmm
yes,
and Roy Brooks on drums, and of course Mingus on bass.
yeah.
Hmm
Don Pullen was really an incredible pianist because he knew the tradition, but he moved things forward. And, a lot like somebody that John played with, and that's Mary Lou Williams.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I was reading something. Mary Lou Williams probably was the first musician to engage John and give him a job when he arrived in New York in '71.
Wow.
I'll always remember John's son, John Stubblefield V, was born, and he and Mary Lou Williams wrote a song for him called Baby Man. But
Wow.
she did. She gave him his first, and I can't remember. There was someone that John had played with in Chicago that told Mary Lou Williams that he was in town. And I remember reading that there was a telephone strike in New York during that time. So obviously you couldn't really get in touch with people. So this person really had to seek him out, in order to get that information to him. But she was the first.
Yeah, I could imagine it could be like back then during the telephone strike, they probably had to yell in the window, like you remember in Rocky,
Yes.
when Rocky yells to Paulie.
Yeah. Can
Yeah,
you
yeah, something
imagine?
like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
He really, John, and we'll talk about the Mingus Big Band dynasty and all that stuff in a few minutes, but really to me, with all the research that I've done and the listening, I talked to you yesterday about the linear jazz narrative, as I call it. And it speaks of this player followed this player begot this player begot this player. And like when you look at the history of the saxophone, John isn't in that list. And that's one of the things as we've been, writing about jazz very seriously for a while now, just as I've been a fan my entire life. The thing that's really bothered me is that there's all these great players that are not acknowledged by historians and people in the field. And I would think that by playing with Miles, Freddie Hubbard, and McCoy Tyner, that would be enough
Yes.
to place John's, importance in a big way. But, he also kind of reminds me of Eric Dolphy in some ways, too. Not because of the amount of horns that he played, but because you told me how he would say, Joyce, I'll be right back for a minute. And he'd go write a tune, and he heard a melody that the birds
Yes.
were singing, and it would, he would take
Well,
some.
it's interesting. There are a lot of things that I'm learning as I'm interviewing and talking to different musicians who work with him. So I don't want to take credit for anything that's not mine. But what I draw from the information is that the music, as always, was evolving.
Mm-hmm.
The masters, everybody was playing with them, but it seems like there was a gap there where all of a sudden, the music began to change, and perhaps he got caught in that spin where things were changing and people weren't focusing like they were on the Miles Davises and the Art Blakeleys and so on and so forth, McCoy Tyners. And John was so focused on improvisation and the fact that you play the music, you play what you feel, you play it for enjoyment as well as for the entertainment. And I guess in his case, he may have been so focused on that, people thought, well, okay, we're cutting off on the masters here, we're starting a new thing. So whatever the case may be, it didn't deter him from enjoying and playing his music all over the world.
Now, you just mentioned about the music changing and playing the music for enjoyment. Of course, John comes from a rich musical lineage, coming from hearing the gospel and blues and everything like that back in Arkansas. And he was also very, very into the avant-garde scene. So I guess what you mean when you say that the music was changing and he was caught in the middle was he caught in the was he basically disinterested in the jazz rock and jazz funk so-called fusion that was going on at the time, or?
I can't really say, we were on the cusp of rap. We were on the cusp of, rock and roll was already there,
Yeah.
but some musicians were changing, even one of his CDs, Sophisticated Lady, when he talked to me about that, he said, Joyce, the music is changing. I think I'm going to be a little more, a little rock and roll, a little less jazz.
Mm-hmm.
But he did it. I mean, it did well, but that wasn't what he wanted to play. He wanted to play jazz.
Right.
The jazz is taught by the masters and how he had learned it and how he wrote it, not only for himself, but, wrote it and arranged it for other musicians. So I can't, not being there. And like I said, my statement was drawn from some of the people that I've talked to. So I don't want to stand on that. But as anything, it evolves. And when that change comes, some people get caught up in that. And, they don't get that recognition that they, might have gotten if they had been at another time.
Right. So before we get back to talking about John, what about your background?
My background.
And what led you to want to write a book about his life specifically?
Well, my background is human resource management. I do a lot of leadership training and I write a lot of training. So I'm not shy to writing, but actually I wrote the initial opening of this book as I flew home after John transitioned. And it has been kind of sitting, and I would pick it up every now and again. And it's just now that I think that I'm ready, because when he passed away, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for several years. But when I thought about a book for my brother flying home, I even have what I might be a title, and I won't say it because I might change it. But my whole idea was I wanted people to remember my brother. I wanted them to know him more intimately. They knew him as his music, but I wanted musicians to speak to that. Right. And that's why this book is so important to me. And luckily my background is writing and teaching and, all interviewing and things like that. So that's how I have come to this point.
Are there any musicians that you've interviewed so far that shed some really revelatory information about his playing or music?
Yeah, I've interviewed quite a few, and they have, there's a thread that I find in my interviews, and they speak of my brother's integrity, his wit, his commitment to share his knowledge. Mm-hmm. I can remember talking with Sue. She told me that there was not a birthday or an anniversary or anything while they were on the road that John didn't go out to celebrate it in some way. So he loved people. First, he loved his instruments. I can tell you that. In one interview with one friend, she was telling me that she was talking to him, and he told her, "Well, I've got to take care of Baby and Sugar." And she said, "Who is Baby and Sugar?" He said, "Those are my horns. I have to practice." if I don't practice, baby and Sugar are going to be mad at me. And I told her, I said, I never, ever heard him give names to his instruments, but he did. I'm going through his day books now, and there was practice time. Practice, practice, practice. He did not waver on that. So, yeah.
So Baby and Sugar, what was the tenor? What was the alto? What was the soprano?
Well, she didn't say, but I know that the tenor was Baby. The alto was probably Sugar. I don't know what he named the others. Those were the main two that he had named. I thought that this is very interesting.
Yeah, that's that's yeah, because I think there's quite a few musicians who have named their instruments, like B.B. King, Lucille.
Yeah.
There's other jazz musicians who's given their horns and things names, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
Well, that was really new for me. That was interesting.
So where did he teach throughout his career?
Where did he teach?
Mm-hmm.
Well, initially, when John finished college, the Vietnam War was hot and heavy. He initially taught as an itinerant teacher in the city of Chicago. So he went around to several schools teaching. He also, well, of course, he was at Jazzmobile for over 20 years.
Right. That's a
Right.
huge important school program. Dave Liebman has taught there as well. So many.
Oh, man, he was there all the time, every Saturday for sure. Without missing. John also, for a minute we talked and he said, no, I think I'm just going to take a job. This is when things were kind of down for him. And he went to Rutgers and he taught. He was I don't know what they call them, professors of music or over one of the music departments, but he was over the jazz department there. I believe he was there maybe about a year. But I was reading through his bio, and the intercollegiate jazz band there won an award. They had never won before, while he was there teaching. And he was real excited about that. But after about a year, he called me up. He said, I love being on the road. I love carrying the music around the world. I can't be, in a classroom. So out he came. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's so interesting because a lot of musicians, they don't quite have the financial opportunities playing. So a lot turn to teaching. And, he's written such a body of music that it's actually, there's the John Stubblefield Papers at the University of Arkansas.
Yes.
And that's a very important thing. It was expected to be completed in 2020, but because of what's going on currently in the world, I would imagine that'll probably be a project that'll be finished down the road. But that's
well, actually, not to interrupt you, it has been finished. It was finished in March of 19. They have cataloged all of his information, and this is the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville. Of course, John went to AM&N, which is a part of the university system, but they have a far-reaching library and made the decision to leave his papers with them, and they are all cataloged and can be accessed through the university system. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, February the 6th, just before the COVID, the Mingus band came down for the opening and did a concert for the opening of the papers. So they're ready for those who are interested.
Wow. Yeah, the Mingus Big Band, and I got to get myself a copy of that Detroit set. I got to order a copy on Amazon because I still like physical product. I'm one of those people.
Yes.
I Am 3, I streamed it today. That's a great album.
Oh, yeah.
And he arranged, I think, 3 tunes, and also he conducted it from his wheelchair. That's astonishing because that's rigorous music.
Yes. Well, while he was convalescing, musicians were with him every day.
Wow.
Every day someone was there, and they were in the middle of, writing and arranging and, for the release of that CD, and they would bring information. He would be very, very tired, and when they would come and bring the music to be arranged, that was it. It was like nothing. He would wake up, he would do it, he would have all the energy. So,
Yeah.
and then we were so glad that he was able to go into the studio. I believe, let's see, February, that might have been October of 2004,
Mm.
2000, yeah, 2004, that he did go, and he conducted, and you know, mhm, yeah,
So he had also played with the World Saxophone Quartet as well, with
yes,
David Murray and Hamiet Blewett, and I'm forgetting somebody. Oh, Julius Hemphill.
right.
That's a great. That's a great group.
Yeah,
And
they traveled a lot. He used to speak of them all the time.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Hmm.
that's very complex stuff when you listen to their albums. It's like wow,
Yeah,
and just his commitment to music and different kinds of music. And just looking at the IM3, the people that are on that record, I mean, there's a young Jeremy Pelt. Jeremy Pelt, of course, is one of the top trumpet players in New York, for
yeah,
sure. Randy Brecker's on there. Miguel
yeah,
Zanon, um, who plays with my good friend Antonio Sanchez occasionally, as well as the San Francisco Jazz Collective. Abraham Burton. I hadn't seen that name for a while because I first heard Abraham on Damn by Jimmy Smith back in '95. So that
hmm,
was, so I knew Abraham was around, but, seeing all of these great players in that album, and um, are there any particular favorites of yours of John's albums and music that really stick out for you?
Actually, the Midnight Over Memphis is there's a cut that he arranged for Hank Crawford. That's a
Oh,
name. Yeah, he arranged that for Hank Crawford, and I like a lot of the music that he has written, but that arrangement of Midnight Over Memphis is just my all-time favorite. I can put it on and I can listen to it over and over again. It's like a ballad, and he blows it so smoothly, and I really enjoy that.
I
Mhm.
mean, Hank's sound would just get you right here.
Yeah,
I mean, just the soul dripping out of that alto.
yeah,
It's just,
yes,
yeah.
yes. Hmm. And you mentioned Abraham. Was it
Bur-
Abraham? His last name was
Abraham Burton.
Burton. Abraham Burton was one of the three that came down for the concert at the university for the opening of the papers. He played saxophone. He was a saxophonist. We had a bass player, and I believe it was Helen's son,
Yeah, great
and
pianist.
and Andy. I can't remember Andy's last name. He played bass. The three of them came down for the opening. Hmm.
What do you? I know this could be a difficult question, but what do you think John would be doing today, musically?
I think, and I don't have to think about this a long time. I think that John would still be writing and arranging and playing and traveling and playing the music because that is what he enjoyed more than anything. He um, he led the Mingus band for several years, and I think it was just a treat for him to be there. As a matter of fact, he told me that he continued to travel when he didn't feel well, simply because of the fact that he had participated in writing and arranging, and he wanted to hear and play the music.
Yeah,
So if John were with us now, he would be doing what he was doing at the time.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, the Mingus Big Band too. That music is. I always thought that Mingus was like an extension of Duke Ellington, but taking the gospel and the blues elements, and obviously socially conscious.
Yes.
Like, what's that tune? Cell Block F, Tis Nazi USA.
Yes.
Yeah, like really, and of course, Fables of Faubus, all that music, and I've come across some folks who have a challenge with Mingus because they find his music too avant-garde, but to me, there's nothing really that avant-garde about it because you feel that.
Yeah.
And it's a direct connection to the spirituals and everything.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Song of Orange is on I Am 3.
Yeah.
And John and I were talking, and he said, and this is way back when he originally, I guess, joined the Mingus band, and I could be wrong, but he said that Mingus just walked in one day and said, Orange, Orange. I'm going to write a song about orange, And there we have it. Song of Orange. So.
Did he witness any of Mingus's knocking players out on the bandstand or anything like that?
Oh, no. I don't know. I didn't hear that.
Because back in the early 60s and stuff, Mingus had knocked some guys out on the bandstand for not getting the music right,
Yeah. But, I hear that there are a lot of musicians still, especially the masters that are still around. If somebody is kind of a neophyte and they're not getting it right, they'll stop them and, check them at the door and say, get it right or what have you.
Yeah.
But that's that discipline that they had.
Yeah, like I think it was Song of Orange. Maybe it had a little bit of the Art Blakey background from Moanin', like one of the riffs. Something like that was in one of the tunes. That was great because, again, that shows the diverse interest of John's music. And, I just thought about this. Not that I have any connections to Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, but you might want to submit that his music is played by that band.
Okay.
Yes. Because Wynton Marsalis is always very interested in, looking at, the history of the music and things like that. And I think John has made tremendous contributions to the big band era. And I was talking to some friends who had never even heard of him before. And I had, but until this interview opportunity came along, I knew the name, but I had never really listened. And in the first record that came up, because I have an Amazon HD music subscription, they only have 2 records, and the first one is Morning Song. And a tune that, first of all, there's a great band on that one. George Cables and Clint Houston, who played with Woody Shaw on bass, Victor Lewis, another Woody Shaw one. There's a tune on there called King of Hearts.
Yes, King of Hearts. I forgot about that. That's another favorite.
That's a great tune. That's almost got like it's what I would consider a kind of melody that would only happen after the 60s when pop got involved in jazz. And that's just a really, really cool tune. And of course, there's So What on that record too. And you could really tell how much he loves Coltrane, on that tune, but he's not imitating him. It's just paying a homage. And as far as McCoy Tyner, was he on any of McCoy's records in that period, or was it just a touring situation?
Actually, he was on a McCoy Tyner CD, where the one that he won the Grammy. John was on that.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up King of Hearts, because that's one of those, when I talk about what he wrote. Now, I said he rearranged for Hank Crawford, but King of Hearts, I love too. That's his, that he wrote. And when I hear it, I know it. It was interesting. I was listening to Pandora, and when I hear saxophone, I just hear him. But I kept listening, and it was Pandora Stubblefield music, and it was him. I thought, I know that's my brother. That's him.
Yeah.
And when they got through, they said, yeah, it was John Stubblefield. I thought, yeah, I can tell. I I do want to share this. Not early on, but maybe the 70s. I can't remember. John was perfecting circular breathing.
Ah.
I can't remember who it was that was working with him on it, and he was struggling with it a bit. And finally, when he got it, I mean, he got it, and he taught it over and over again. And he came home once for a concert and did a master class teaching them how to circular breathe. It was amazing. He held a sheet of paper up in front of his face, and he put that air in his cheeks, and he went forever, ever, ever. So, those were the milestones. That we would talk on the phone for hours. We do 2 hours and not talk for 3 weeks, and then another 2 hours. So it was those things that made him happy. Now, there were times that he would call and he would be, the music isn't happening, it's not doing, I'm not where I want to be. But I would always encourage him that all musicians are like that. That's the life of a musician, But the key thing, I think, and I know that John found in his career, is that he loved the music no matter what.
Right.
It was like a hobby, but he loved it, and he was going to play it, he was going to write it, and he wanted it done the right way.
Sure, sure. Now, you had said to me that he called you the day that John Coltrane died.
Yes.
And that was July 17th of 67, I believe. And did he ever get a chance to play with Coltrane, or did he know him personally?
I read something. I don't know whether he might have played with Coltrane in Chicago. Gonna have to look that up. Somehow, I think maybe there might have been an opportunity where he sat in, but I do know, and I know that he embraced all saxophone players, but John Coltrane was definitely the person that he loved John Coltrane's music. He was just amazing. I have to tell this as a teenager, I liked rock and roll. I liked Smokey Robinson, and John came home once and he said, there's more than one genre of music, Joyce. You need to listen to other types of music. And I was like, no, all I want to hear is "Ooh, Baby, Baby." That's it.
Yeah.
So he sat me down. I mean, this is a teaching part of him. And he said, first he played Dave Brubeck's Take Five. So, I liked that. I went, okay, all right, I'll listen. But we ended up with John Coltrane's A Love Supreme. And I was sold. And, when he came in, I was like, no way, you will not get my record player. We're going to listen to Smokey Robinson. But John Coltrane's Love Supreme. And that just goes to show you, he liked all the music, but he loved John Coltrane. As a matter of fact, the day that he died, he called me and he was crying. And I, obviously, what's wrong? And he said, Joyce, Coltrane died today. It was devastating to him.
I think what's very interesting about when Coltrane died was there's a lot of scholars and critics who point to the death of free jazz as a genre. Once Coltrane died, it was considered like a symbolic death. That really couldn't be farther from the truth, because there was all the people from Europe doing incredible things like Peter Brotzman and that whole scene. But John Coltrane was really somebody special, because I know I first really heard John Coltrane when I was 8 years old. My late mother used to buy me a lot of records.
Uh-huh.
One day she brought home for me an album called The European Tour. It was on Pablo.
Okay.
And that was like my introduction to John Coltrane. And I think Someday My Prince Will Come by Miles Davis. But it took me all through my 20s to get to that late period of John Coltrane with albums like Ascension and Interstellar Space and Ohm and all those ones. But once I got it, you know, his music just communicates, I feel, to anybody as long as you're willing to listen, because there's so much feeling in Coltrane's music.
Yes.
It's somebody searching for the cosmos, especially in the later period. And, you know, it's almost a shame that John hadn't been in New York around 65, because I could imagine him being on Ascension.
Yes. Yes, he probably would have been.
Yeah, because it had all those players, Pharoah Sanders, everybody.
Yeah.
So, you know, so is there any timeline when this book may be published?
I don't want to, you know, overspeak the timeline. I would hope that maybe by the middle of next year or sooner. It just depends on how many musicians I can reach, because really the soul of the book are the memoirs of the musicians who have played with him. And again, you know, we talk about that gap and a lot of people not knowing about John. You know, that to me, that will fill in that gap. People will come to know him through those papers that they can access. But then if they have this book, you know, who was this John Stubblefield? You know, how was he committed to this music? What kind of music did he play? Who did he play with? Who did he impact? Who did he help along the way? So, but to answer your question, hopefully by the middle of next year, or it could be sooner. Mm-hmm.
Terrific. So before we go, everyone, I just want to let everybody know that the New York Jazz Workshop right now is offering classes virtually during the quarantine. There's incredible classes taught by the likes of Mark Momas, taught by the likes of Ron Horton, who will be starting a jazz history and appreciation class. So there's everything that people who are going to be watching this interview, hopefully this will be a window into, okay, who is John Stubblefield? Because I really think, and you know, I'm one of those, like I said, I've been listening to jazz forever, but I think even for people who are just getting into the music, it's so important that a John Stubblefield is known, because it's that next level once you digest all of the essential music.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, like I said, this book, his legacy, I didn't state it in those terms, but as you said too, yes, I would love for people to know him and not forget, you know, his contribution to the jazz world.
And hopefully, since streaming is now such a big thing, I would hope that the record labels he recorded for, like Enja, will start reissuing the music. Soul Note will start reissuing the music digitally. If not, vinyl is a big thing, and maybe they'll start putting out, you know, reissues of the vinyl of some of that music. I would hope, so that another generation can check it out. But Joy Stubblefield, thank you so much for coming. And this is the New York Jazz Workshop in conversation with Zoom video series. I'm CJ Shearn. Peace, love, groove, and keep swinging, everybody.